I don't know who needs to hear this, but I pray it finds the right person. You do not get a gold star or extra points for saving someone or trying to save someone who needs to be saved in your eyes. You're not a more virtuous or loyal person. You also are not guaranteed loyalty from someone else. And you especially do not get peace because actually, if you live this way, you have the opposite of peace. And I know that because trust me, I've been there. I learned the hard way as a retired people pleaser, showing up, overextending myself, not understanding how people are not seeing how much I love them, how much I'm showing up for them, how much I'm doing this, and thinking, oh no, people don't love the same way I do, and that kind of thing. All of this stuff kind of comes down to creating storylines about other people, their situation, and your role in all of that. And the worst part is a lot of the times the stories we create are false. They're just our own perception, our own projections onto the situation. We invent stories about what people are thinking or how things should be for someone. And when we try to intervene based on our story, it doesn't work. And we just martyr ourselves for a story that isn't even true in the first place. Like, in what world does that make any sense? It doesn't. But it's very common. It's very addicting. So I want to talk about that today. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Danae. Thanks for tuning into the Yap. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen on Spotify at Pretty Philosophical with Danae Seaton. That's also linked in the description. So this conversation came up with a friend the other day, and I just couldn't get out of my head. And I think it's so common and relatable. I think this happens oftentimes because we are empathetic, let's say as a baseline, especially if you're a people pleaser or a retired people pleaser, and then you project whatever thoughts or emotions you might have to you think you might have or have towards a situation onto someone else, even though their perception might be completely different. It's not to say that what your perception isn't right, but everybody is seeing the world through their lens, which is their own personal experiences. So it's bold of us to think that we get how someone is perceiving a situation as a baseline. But then two, because of the way that we project onto what we think they're going through or believe or whatever the case is, we also set expectations not only for ourselves and for them, for what our role should be in the story we created, but also in what we believe their response should be. Based on me trying to save you in this way to help you stop that bad habit, stop drinking, stop smoking, stop whatever the case is, based on my projection of like your journey and how I'm going to save you and all the things I'm going to do for you, I need you to act this way. And it's so frustrating when you don't act this way. This is a very nuanced conversation, so I'm trying to tread lightly and use the correct words and be clear in what I'm saying. I think more times than not, coming from the lens of a people pleaser, we do this. We project onto people. We create storylines about situations, put ourselves in the middle of the storyline for no reason at all, and then get upset or subconsciously feel resentment towards the way people respond to our acting as God mentality, which does nobody in the picture good. And this is often heightened when it comes to family situations. So you might feel a pressure to save your parents in some specific way, let's say, like they deal with something emotionally, or you have projected that they see the world in this certain way. Let's say my mom is lonely and has no friends. We perceive that based on our lens of our mom, let's say. By the way, to be clear, this is not about my mom. I'm just making that clear. But let's say that's a thing. Then you project, okay, I must save her and be her friend. But then there's friction because whenever you try, she doesn't take it the right way or she doesn't understand or whatever it is, something like that. And then you have a little bit of subconscious resentment. Whenever you start to think, you start to have the storyline about something that isn't, let's say, baseline factual, like your mom has not verbally said to you, this is the case. I want you to ask yourself, is this true or is this a story I'm creating about her or about said person or about said thing, right? Because if you just dig deeper one more time, you say, okay, why do I think this way? Maybe there's a fair reason why you think your mom has no friends or something like that. But then you can ask yourself, is it my job as her daughter to be her friend? Or is it my job to be the best daughter possible? And then the way that you act and the way that you show up will be to be the best daughter rather than being the best friend. And the best thing you can do for her in that situation is be the best daughter. And the actions that you take and the way that you then feel about them will be drastically different, right? Because showing up as a friend versus a daughter, two different things. What does she actually expect from her friend versus her daughter? Hopefully that makes sense, because then what happens is we're looking at a situation so differently. The person we're trying to save, we're trying to help, is not taking it the way we want them to take it. And then we're over here spiraling, mentally, physically exhausted, and then doing this in every relationship that we have. And we're like, life is so hard and annoying. Well, yeah, because we're taking on more than we should to make ourselves feel better, to scratch an itch that tells you that you're an empathetic, virtuous person who who's saving the world. Like, no, you're not. You're just actually making your relationships worse than they could be. And I know that 80% of you that tune in are women, and a lot of us women are conditioned to be fixers, the one who takes things on, but a lot of times it is overdone and then dressed up as empathy. There is absolutely a fine line between empathy and being obsessed with saving people to be liked. And you have to toe it very lightly, especially when you tend to lean into people-pleasing tendencies. You need to remind yourself that you are not a better person because you absorb everyone's emotions. In fact, you will likely show up as a better friend, daughter, partner, coworker if you stop trying to deeply absorb everyone's emotions. See people's emotions for what they are. And what are emotions? Simply information. It's not instructions on what to do next. It's just information. Then you ask yourself, are these emotions that I'm having even true? That's step one. How do you figure that out? Sometimes you just ask, hey babe, how can I help you? Mom, I noticed that you've been in bed all week. You haven't been hanging out with your bestie. What's going on? Did you want to have a little mother-daughter brunch? Or maybe you just make her a little breakfast in bed? As just to add on to that example that I gave earlier, emotions are information, and that information may not be accurate. So the second layer is then you respond from discernment, not an obligation. If you figure out something is true, okay, then what? What is my role in this? What is the actual expectation of me trying to go in right now? Do I think I'm going to go in and make her never feel lonely again? Or do I think that I could brighten her day today and continue to do things as a daughter that brightens her day? As an example, your friend has a bad habit that's holding her back. If she's smoking every single day, she's zooted all the time. Remind yourself that you are not God. Your role is not to make her stop and never be zooted again. Your role is to plant seeds in her and remember that she must go through the journey and the trenches herself. Sometimes you can spread out everything as perfect as it possibly could be and it won't work because they need to have that click and that shift in their head. There are people who listen to me saying the exact thing they need to hear, but it won't click and it won't develop in them until they experience something that then makes a click for them. It's just a seed that's planted, and maybe they'll come back and realize that I have so many experiences like that where I look, wow, what this person said or this specific situation could have taught me that then, but I needed to go through this situation. And this is nuanced. That's not always the case, right? But it's important to separate yourself from these perceived expectations over these perceived narratives and storylines that you create about, if I don't do this, she's going to end up like this, and then it's my fault, and then did it like, whoa, how did we get here? The story is our girl is just a little bit too comfortable smoking right now, and we are going to do our best job as a friend to not judge, remind her, lead her in the right direction with little incremental seed planting, and keep it moving. I say this all the time, and I hope to drill it into everyone's head. We suffer more in our thoughts, and oftentimes as empaths or as people who have the tendency to people please, we create stories and thoughts, and they're just not true sometimes. It's just our projection of things. It's a hypothesis, it's a guess. Remember, this video is just a little reminder to see it as a story, to see it as a guess, and to separate yourself from expectation and outcomes. And when you wrap yourself around a story that you created, especially one where you're the hero, you trap yourself in a cycle that will end in burnout. Period, point blank. Like, there's no going around that. That is going to be the case. You can show up as a great person for every single person in your life without being an emotional sponge and savior. Actually, just chill out. It's gonna be okay. You can care deeply, you can feel emotions deeply without actually carrying them. Do you get it? I hope I'm making sense today. It's okay to relax, it's okay to put it down, and this is actually the better thing to do in the long term. All right, we'll talk soon.